Good morning, everybody. We're going to get started. We'll have a couple stragglers come in. I think this is the fastest we've gotten started here for service cabinet, so we should all be very impressed with ourselves. Welcome to our February Borough Service Cabinet meeting. I want to start out by taking the roll. Community Board 1. Community Board 2. Community Board 3.
Present.
Community Board 4. Community Board 5. Community Board 6.
Present.
Community Board 7. Community Board 8.
Present.
Community Board 9.
Present.
Community Board 10. Community Board 11. Community Board 12. Community Board 13. Community Board 14.
Here.
Community Board 15.
Here.
Community Board 16.
Present.
Community Board 17. Community Board 18. ACS. Public Library. Commission on Human Rights. Con Ed. Department for the Aging. Department of Buildings.
Present.
Department of City Planning.
Yes.
DCAS. Department of Consumer Affairs. Department of Corrections. DDC. DEP. Department of Finance. Department of Health. Department of Homeless Services. Department of Housing and Preservation Development. Do It. Department of Parks and Recreation. Department of Probation. Department of Sanitation North. Department of Sanitation South. Department of Transportation. DYCD. Fire Department. HRA. Mayor's Office Community Assistance. MTA. New Entry Transit. National Grid. OEM. Police Department, Brooklyn North. Police Department, Brooklyn South. Small Business Services. U.S. Postal Service. 311. Verizon. All right, I know a number of agencies were participating in the HOPE survey last night, obviously including DHS, but a number of other people also called to say that they were going to be participating and probably not up in time to make it for this meeting, so we'll give them a pass. Just a couple of quick announcements, and then I'll open it up to the floor for everyone else. Just a reminder, community board applications are due February 15th, so if you haven't told your members yet, or if you have people that want to apply, the deadline is the 15th, which is coming up this week. So our applications are available on our website. There's new applications as well as applications for renewal applicants. Today at 6 o'clock, we are hosting, the Borough President is hosting a panel discussion here on human trafficking. Major sporting events, the Super Bowl, NBA All-Star Weekend, things like that are major magnets for trafficking issues. And so we're trying to use this week to highlight the issues around trafficking, especially here in Brooklyn. At 5:30, we have a press conference where we're launching an initiative with an education campaign to help train hotel workers to recognize signs of trafficking in their hotels. That's today at 6 o'clock. There are packets of flyers at the door. You should have gotten information on all of these things. Also, this Friday, we are celebrating Brooklyn's Golden Couples. That's for couples who are together for 50 years or more. We have a champagne and cake celebration for them on Friday. The deadline to RSVP is tomorrow, so if you have any couples that you know of that live in Brooklyn that have been together for 50 years or more, not necessarily married, but as long as they've been together for 50 years or more, please let them know that they can RSVP for our celebration. On February 18th, we are conducting a workshop with the Department of Finance on property value evaluations. On the 19th, we're doing Give Kids a Smile Day. February is Children's Dental Hygiene Month, so we're having a dental screening van out here on the plaza on February 19th for free dental screenings and other giveaways. As the son of a dentist, that makes my dad very happy. Also on the 19th, we're doing a walking tour and breakfast with clergy at the Weeksville Heritage Center. So if you have clergy in your circles, in your districts, please share with them that information. The RSVP, I believe, is this week for that event as well. On the 20th, we're having Black History Month celebration here at Borough Hall. On March 3rd, we're hosting, in conjunction with the Center for New York City Neighborhoods, a Sandy Resource Recovery Fair. And on March 11th, with our friends at DEP, we're hosting our second series, City Speaks, a conversation with different city agencies where people can have a chance, residents have a chance to come and ask agencies whatever questions they have. And that is on March 11th at 6 p.m. It's a mouthful. Okay. At this time, I want to ask any district managers if they have any announcements they'd like to share with the service cabinet. Sean?
Community Board 14 is hosting a Merchants Roundtable on March 4th at 11 o'clock at our district office. We have a number of agencies and utilities joining us to share policies and services meant for small business owners. So if anybody has programs and services for small businesses and hasn't either heard from me or reached out, please do so. We'd be happy to include more. And then our date for the youth conference has been determined, and it's April 29th at Brooklyn College, at the Student Union Building at Brooklyn College. So we're looking forward to, it's our seventh annual? Our 8th annual. Anya Hoyer, Community Associate from Community Board 14, is joining me today too. I want to introduce her. Thank you. Great,
thank you. Any other announcements from Community Board, district managers? All right, then we're going to jump into our agenda. We're going to mix things up just a little bit. Our first agenda item is a quick update from the Department of Health about some of the residual health concerns that have been raised in the wake of the fire at Williamsburg at storage facility last weekend. Ready? Yeah, you can come up.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ricky Wong. I am Director of Community Affairs at the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. It's nice to see everybody again here. So I wanted to give a quick update about the fire, the major warehouse fire in and around Williamsburg. We understand that people in the community were concerned about the air quality following the fire, but our position is that there's no immediate health risk to the residents and to the community. Anytime there's a fire, local air quality is temporarily affected. Such a change was captured by an extensive network of air monitors that are set up throughout the city. Levels of pollutants were picked up by an actual New York State DEC monitor that was close by, and there was a spike in particulates for just a couple of hours, but that returned back to normal and actually went below normal after that. We continue to advise people that if they have underlying health conditions or there's concerns about exposure, that they should obviously remove themselves from the area or keep their windows closed. We still feel that it's safe out there. We know that there are concerns about the ash and pollutants, but this was a normal structural fire. Both the fire department and OEM are still actively at the scene and investigating. We generally don't issue advisories for fires, but due to the nature of this fire, because of how large it was and how the duration of what it went for, we ended up issuing an air advisory. Now, there were also concerns that we issued the advisory about 14 or 15 hours after the fire had started. The reason being is because we have to work with OEM and FDNY, and when it rose to that level, we actually issued the air advisory. We're working with them to kind of shorten that period and create a new threshold that if it goes beyond a certain range, that we'll have a quicker response. Most of you are generally familiar with our alerts when there's air advisory alert during hot weather situations, and that's to warn people if they have underlying conditions to kind of remove themselves from that situation, get into an air conditioning room or something like that. But beyond that, we feel that the area is safe as far as air quality is concerned. If anybody has any questions, they're more than welcome to ask. I'll stay after the meeting and I'll address those. One separate announcement I wanted to make is that I'm actually having a new Brooklyn Borough liaison starting next Tuesday. That person will actually be reaching out to all the community boards and introducing themselves. They will be attending all your district service cabinet meetings and also the borough service cabinet meetings. And if you have any health or human services subcommittees, feel free to reach out to them. You're still welcome to keep in contact with me as well too. Eventually, there will actually be a second liaison that will be starting, that will be covering Brooklyn, because Brooklyn obviously has the largest amount of community boards. We're going to kind of break that up a little bit, so we'll share the load. But it's great to see everybody again and again. I'll stay behind in case anybody has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky. We're going to switch things up just a little bit here, and we're going to jump to our fourth agenda item because it's pretty short, and that's a presentation on Commune, which is a new civic engagement platform developed through the Center for Social Innovation. And Joe Lamport is here from Commune that's going to take us through this really quickly. and then we'll go on.
Thanks. Thanks, Andy. Thank you very much for allowing us to be here this morning. We really appreciate it. We were supposed to come in earlier January, but it didn't work out.
You talking to Mike, please?
Sorry. My name is Joe Lamport. Again, I want to thank you all for letting us present. We're a small team of innovators at the Center for Social Innovation, working on one of the issues that you're all familiar with, which is public participation. We include a data scientist, journalist, and community activist like myself. I was a housing organizer and housing advocate across the city as the assistant director of the citywide task force on housing court for years in the 2000s, in the early 2000s. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the issue that we're trying to address, which is public participation. How do we get people into meetings and into being involved? Despite a lot of publicity on this issue, participation in New York City remains abysmally low. The surveys show that as few as 1 in 10 New Yorkers describes themselves as participating in issues that affect them in their neighborhoods. So we've come up with we've developed an approach to this, and we're here today to ask for your help, because we don't have a solution. We have an approach that we think could lead to a solution, and it involves using technology. So we call it commune, not commune, but commune, which basically means to be in close rapport, and that's what we're talking about, getting residents and government in closer relationship with each other. How's this work? Like that. So that's basically our story. I'm going to go quickly, and feel free to interrupt me if anything comes to mind. Public participation is hard. I know from personal experience that the former speaker of the city council had 4 people working every week to identify what was going on in council members' offices across the city so that she could put together a calendar to help support council members in bringing people into those activities. And that was a huge commitment if you think about what that entailed, going office to office to figure out what was going on. And when I was a housing organizer, I know for a fact that we had many meetings, and I'm sure you'll be able to identify with this, when people would say, oh, geez, I would have been there if I had known about it. It's really kind of revealing that at heart, the fundamental problem is awareness. People sometimes simply aren't aware. Putting flyers up, sending things out via email as PDF documents, these are sort of old tools, and fortunately there's technological applications that can make this much easier and much more effective and much more democratic. Basically what we're talking about is a vision where residents know what's going on. The lack of access and transparency leads to all sorts of issues, and last year the City Council passed a law, Intro 363A, that requires by the end of this year that all public meetings in New York City be in a machine-readable format. So this is all coming, and we've recognized that. At the Center for Social Innovation, there's a variety of groups of people working on these kind of issues as community activists, trying to make things easier to do, especially with the tools that we have available today. And I'm talking about technology. What we've developed is a platform where this information can be put into machine-readable format in a very simple way, and that's what I'm here to introduce. Basically, the current tools just aren't doing the job. These tools, it's almost, I was thinking of a metaphor this morning as I was coming here, and the best one I could think is doing laundry. When you do laundry, you don't, at the end, you fold it, and you put it into categories. I mean, that's basically what you're doing. You don't leave it all jumbled together, right? Otherwise, it's just useless. It's like, so that's basically what we're talking about, is structuring the data that you all deal with every day. Now, intuitively, you all do this every day. You know where to be and what to do, sort of intuitively. Almost sometimes, I'm sure a few people in here probably don't even need a calendar because they're so used to what they do. Unfortunately, that stuff remains locked away in a variety of places, almost siloed. It's locked away and it can't be shared so easily. So again, if you come back to the metaphor of doing laundry, it's not hard. It's hard to categorize things because they're sort of separated by distance, or sometimes by simple entities just don't share information. So I just want to make it clear the vision we have is really to create this closer rapport between residents and local government. Again, we can see the ramifications of this and the consequences in a variety of areas. For the police, it's obvious. When there's a separation between community and residents, there's a real alienation, and it leads to conflict, unnecessary conflict often. You see it in the zoning fights that are coming up regarding certain changing in zoning laws and people concerned about gentrification that came up in the mayor's speech the other day. Again, this doesn't need to happen if people are closer to the action. We all know that. We all know that people come to the meeting and they're not aware that there's been a variety of discussions on a particular issue. So that's what we're talking about here, is putting this information that exists into a format, structuring it so that people can get access to it, so that you can share it more easily, and so that people don't have to remain sort of unaware of what's going on around them. Oops. So basically, we're talking about turning public notices into structured and open data. Intro 363A requires it, so it's coming up. This is something that you're going to have to do within a year or so. So we've come up with a solution. Basically, when you have that data and it's structured, once you've sort of sorted out your laundry, you can do lots of things with it. You can put the socks in the sock drawer. You can put, the shirts over there, and you can do things with your stuff. You don't have to, leave it in a big jumble and someone come along and say, what is this, right? So how this works. The first thing is that we've developed what's called a what you see is what you get public notice meeting manager. We'd love to be able to show this to you and share it with you and show you how it works. It's designed to the workflows. We worked with CB6 out here in Brooklyn, are they here? And CB11 in Manhattan to sort of test it out, but we really want more feedback. So one of the reasons I'm here today, again, is we don't have a solution. We have an approach, and we'd like to develop it with community boards and get your feedback and see if this is an approach that can work. So it's designed to your existing workflow. Again, once it's structured, we can do a lot of things with it. You can design apps to work with that data. New York City is on the forefront of access to its data. It's leading the country. Right now, you can go online and get all sorts of data about all sorts of things that the city provides. Services 311 is a huge data trove, and this is leading the city ahead, and it's fortunately is contributing to a real strong tech startup environment. It's really, really contributing because there's data available here. A lot of cities have been a little bit skittish about it, but the more open data is available, it encourages people to see what can be done, what can we innovate once we know what's going on, and once data is available. And we're contributing to that. We're part of the effort to develop apps that work with that. So again, one of the things that's good for residents is once this data is structured and we have a sort of a platform where they can visit, like an app or a website, then we can do things with it, push notifications. So if you're following an issue, let's say you're concerned about the rezoning in your neighborhood, people can use the app that we have available on the App Store for iPhones right now called Commune. It's free. It's a free download. You can enter your address. It'll situate you geographically, and then you can put in your interests, and you'll get push notifications on meetings of whatever interests you. So again, we won't have this issue if someone didn't see the flyer on the telephone pole. Like I said, we're on our way, but we really need your help, and that's why I'm here today. We'd love for you to share your calendar with us. If you have an iCal or Google Calendar, if you could give us the link, I'm going to leave some of my cards at the front table. Please share it with us. We can integrate that immediately into the platform, and all the meeting notices that you're putting up now, we can put onto this platform. That would show up on the app right now, but of course, it's a bigger vision that we have, not just an app. And then also, if you don't have one, tell us. We'll help you develop one. This is a simple way to allow the community to engage with you and to make your meetings more transparent and get more involvement. It's sort of sad when I used to cover Bronx meetings, community board meetings as a reporter in the Bronx, as a news reporter. You go to a meeting and there's two people there and they're both news reporters. We'd like to have your help building a pilot group in your district, a group of residents who are willing to try this out and see if it works. And one of the things about the app approach is that it's very democratic. App phones are increasing. The digital divide is decreasing dramatically with the use of smartphones. So people who say, oh, well, there was a group of older people on the Upper West Side, on the Upper East Side that we worked with. These people were senior citizens in one of the NYCHA projects up there. And I had worked in that project before, and I knew the tenants association. And we went and worked with them with their police council, and people told them they would never watch their police council meetings via the internet. And fortunately, the Daily News did a very good story about the fact that the senior citizens protested when the community board or the police council suggested cutting off that broadcast and said, no, this is how we watch it. This is how we stay engaged. So the idea that technology is a barrier is really an outdated idea. People are using technology, and this is a tool that's available, and we really want people to see it that way. This is a tool just like if you had paper and pen. And then finally, give us notice on our notice manager. We've developed it with community board staff, had them use it, and said, we want this to integrate into your workflow. We don't want to give you something new. We know you're busy. Believe me, we know you're busy. I've visited community boards. There's 1 or 2 people working their butts off to make everything work, and it's amazing, and you all are devoted, and it's the only thing that can explain that is passion and devotion. So, thank you for that. So we're not trying to pile on. That's like, something we're trying to avoid. So thank you very much. I'll leave my card up at the thing. If you have any questions, feel free to call me or send me an email, and I'll be more than happy to answer. Are there any questions?
Any questions from a member of the Service Cabinet? Does that also apply, I know you directed a lot of your comments to the community boards or different types of civic groups. On the agency side as well, you can take public notices, public hearings, public meetings like that, and also push it through the same way, same?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have a variety of ways of getting your notices onto the platform, if that's what you're interested in doing, like your calendar, or if you want to design a manager that we could integrate. We are working with the city as part of the team that's developing the open data thing. Mm-hmm. We are working on that. We're part of that committee. So,
and you have through the app, you do get notifications of different city meetings and different things like that already?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you go on to if you have an iPhone, right now, we haven't developed an Android version, but that's coming. If you have an iPhone, you'll get push notifications in your area, like this meeting. The ideal is that if you're following, let's say you're concerned about liquor licenses, that's in my neighborhood, liquor license is a big issue. And people want to know, is there a bar opening on my street? Because of the noise and all the rest. The ideal is that we're working with the Department of Buildings to have any license applications and SLA to have those notifications on the public meeting manager, and anytime there's a meeting with that address in, it will then notify the person.
Gotcha. Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Great. Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We're going to now go back in order to our second agenda item. But before we do, I know that a bunch of people came in after I called the roll. So if you came in afterwards, I caught a few of you, but I didn't catch everyone. Can you just chime in and say if you're Department for the Aging? Okay. Who else did I miss?
Craig Hammerman, Community Board 6.
Got you, Craig. Anyone? Sheree. Great. Where is probation? Anyone else?
Harry Spitzer, Community Board 12.
Anyone else? Got everyone? All right, great. So we're going to move on to our second agenda item, which is a presentation by the Mayor's Office of Data Analytics on, coincidentally enough, open data. And Amin Mashariki is here to present from the Mayor's Office.
Good morning, everyone. Excuse me. As mentioned, my name is Amin Mashariki. I am the Chief Analytics Officer for New York City and also the Director of MODA, the Mayor's Office of Data Analytics. And I wanted to also introduce a partner in the open data implementation from Do It.
My name is Albert Weber. I manage the Open Data Portal. I work at the Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications.
So we wanted to briefly talk to you guys about open data. I think Joe sort of teased it for us, which we're very appreciative of, and he said some relatively fairly kind words and true words with respect to New York City's leading stance with respect to open data. As I mentioned, my office, the Mayor's Office for Data Analytics, oversees, based on local law 11, 2012, let me see if I can work this thing here. Local law 11 of 2012 that stipulates that all agencies over a specified period of time must open up data sets that are deemed and identified as public data sets. My office plays a role in terms of oversight. While my title is Chief Analytics Officer, I also have a second title, which is Chief Open Platform Officer. And so via that title, we oversee this implementation. And Do It is the people that does it, or do it. At any rate, So as a point of history, I'm the second only Chief Analytics Officer. I think the title was first given out, I think, in 2013, 2012, 2013. And I'm about 3 months into the role, which makes me pretty old. I think 2 weeks in was like, I can no longer say that I'm a newbie at the role. So this is actually a visualization. I think this is a cool visualization of exactly the data sets that exist. So New York City is leading in terms of cities across the country with respects to open data. I came here from the federal government. I spent some time at the White House, and I was also Chief Technology Officer at a federal agency, and one of my roles was to open data, to work on a federal open data initiative. And while that is a very expansive initiative, I can say New York City is comparative to that in terms of not only the quantity, but also the quality. And I think Joe mentioned this concept of machine-readable data. And so it's not just sufficient that you release your data. We have agencies and organizations release their data in any format, but it has to be as usable, as clean, and robust and high quality as possible. And I think New York City is certainly leading in that space. And so currently in the open data portal, there's over 1,100 data sets. Then also exists an open data plan. As I mentioned, through the data law, we've given the agencies up to 2018, and you'll see a brief sort of timeline of where we are with that, but we've given them up to 2018 to open up their data sets. As you can imagine, when you publish a law, certain agencies have certain things that they're going to need to do to be able to dig into their current data sets and be able to release those data sets. So we wanted to sort of build out a schedule and a timeline for that, to allow for them to do that successfully. So this is just a list of 80+ city entities that currently have released their data on the open data portal. I think Department of Education has a large swath of data, CCRB, and so on and so forth. And so NYPD is happily, they are poised to release some really important data very soon. We just had some good discussions with them. And so one of the things that we do with Do It, we go around and we work with the agencies to identify the data sets, to walk them through how to get it into Do It's infrastructure. Do It has a really great document that talks about how to transfer the data from the agency into the open data portal. And so we sort of handhold where need be the agencies. And so we're working with the agencies, and we get excited when agencies like NYPD and other agencies are opening up really, really helpful and useful and golden data sets. So the website is as simple as nyc.gov/data. And so that's the portal website. And when you go into you put that into your browser, you will see this. I think, and Albert will speak to, we're gonna get an upgrade pretty soon, so he'll speak to any new features, any additional features. So we have a certain, I can't really see here, but we have a certain number of data sets, data types. You can actually, within the portal, visualize the data, graphs, pie charts, line graphs, maps. Maps are really helpful and are one of the most used, I think, visualization methods there. There's also mechanisms to view the data. So, for instance, if we're talking about visualizing data, this is a view of parking violations by vehicle make. And again, this is all open data. This is all freely available data. So what it says is that Ford has the largest amount of parking violations over the course of, I think that's since 2010, I believe. And so you're able to see by make, and I think Pontiac, Buick, and Saturn are on the tail there. So if you have a Ford, yeah, at any rate. So you're able to visualize the city data, and it makes a lot of sense. I think there are countless online people build blog posts on all sorts of information that they get from open data that's extremely helpful. When the open data law was brought about, it was brought about with three things in mind: government transparency, enhancement of services to the communities. And that's one of the things that my office works on with respects to analytics. And then also enhancing, as mentioned, enhancing businesses, building a strong, robust startup community, startup technology community. And so when you're able to visualize data like this, it informs the public, but also it provides a level of transparency as well into what's happening in the government. Understanding users, there's analytics to the website, so we get a sense of who's coming onto the website, which data sets are really important to them, which data sets they're downloading the most and they're using the most, and so we're able to really sort of micro target data sets to make sure that they're updated consistently and frequently enough so that the data set is relevant and a strong and usable data set. And then we have, I know many of you have probably heard of NYC Big Apps Competition. It's held every summer, and I'll let Albert, he's going to go into a little bit more detail on some of these things, and I'll let him sort of go into the big apps. But I'll get your slide there.
Thank you, Amin. So I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into a lot of the initiatives and a lot of the slides that Amin spoke to when he just ran through that brief slide deck. So the Open Data Portal has over 1,200 data sets currently available from over 80 entities. So a lot of the data comes from city agencies, whether it's Department of Finance, Department of Education. We work closely with business improvement districts, and then local companies that are based here in the city, whether it's Yelp or Google, who also contributed data to the portal. So it's sort of expanded from being data that's strictly city-based, and it's more so data about the city of New York. So we just wanted to make sure that everyone could go to this one-stop shop and get data on city agencies or just things that will be useful for them as New Yorkers or people visiting the city of New York. So in 2012, the Open Data Law, Local Law 11 of 2012, was put into effect, and it pretty much put out a number of milestones for releasing data for the city through 2018. One of those things, which I'll dive into a little bit later, is the Open Data Plan, which pretty much is a schedule from all city agencies of all of the public data they intend to release. Just quickly in terms of what's available on the plan, so Amin pointed out that piece with the cars that get the most traffic violations. You can also go in there and see the restaurant inspections, the history of inspections from your favorite restaurant, the parking violations, I guess local businesses or buildings that are having violations with the Environmental Control Board. So you'll see whether it's a business that's illegally dumping cooking oil, improperly disposing of garbage in front of the building. Just a whole lot of information that I think, as Joe was saying earlier, once that data is out there, you can do this analysis and you can kind of find out what's going on in the city. One of the most popular pieces of analysis that was done with the parking violations, somebody pointed out what the most expensive fire hydrant was in the city. There was a setup, if you can kind of picture this. You had a place where cars would park, and then there was sort of a bike lane in between, and then an extra space for, I guess, joggers, and then you had the actual fire hydrant. People didn't realize that that fire hydrant was actually, a place where you could be ticketed. So I think that fire hydrant on a regular basis was bringing in like $300,000 or so for the city on a yearly basis. That was reported to the Department of Transportation, and that fire hydrant wasn't even being in use, and that fire hydrant was moved. So I think that just shows a success story of people doing this analysis of city data, and it coming back and it being a benefit for everyone, and causing us not to get a lot of parking tickets. Yeah, sure.
So that actually reminds me of another sort of way to use open data. One of the things that my office does is we use agency data, but we also use open data. And just to share with you guys, one of the projects we worked on is called Business Atlas, and it's a public-facing initiative website, and it's actually up now, which is, most large companies, Target, Starbucks, and so on and so forth, when they want to open up a new store in the area, they have a lot of resources available to them to do market research, not so much for small businesses. And so what Moda did, what my office did, was look at open data sources that exist that are coming in from agencies, so permit data. So for instance, if someone applied for a permit for a sign for their store, and on that sign, and on the open data, it tells you what's on that sign, and if on that sign it says movies, then we assume that that's a movie theater, right? And so what we did was we overlaid all of the businesses in a particular area and all of the different resources that exist in a particular area, specifically around business, so that now small business owners can go on to the Business Atlas and actually do market research. So they actually get free market research, and this is all done from open data. Another use can possibly be when neighborhoods, when neighborhoods want to go to large companies and say, you know, this is actually a vibrant, strong neighborhood, and you should actually bring your business here. Again, Business Atlas, just using open data. And what we did was we actually performed a probabilistic fuzzy matching sort of algorithm on that to identify this stuff. But just using open data, we performed that algorithm on it, and so now you can tell large companies, hey, you know what, this is actually a strong, vibrant community, so you can actually use it for that as well. Also, going to the bank to get a loan as a small business, you can use the Business Atlas as a tool to your banker, loan officer, to say, you know what, this is actually a viable business to invest in because look what's going on in the community. And that's actually up and running now, and it's all, now my office built the analytics and the algorithm to make it work, but it's all based on open data. So that's another sort of view of how open data can be used.
And I'm also going to dive in a little bit later into applications that were built by the public and also by the city. So that pretty much summed up all of the data that's currently available. Those are a lot of the, I guess people consider the high value data sets that are available on the portal. And here's just a list of sort of what's to come. So that open data plan was put out, and the agency scheduled all of the data that they plan to release. So some of the interesting things that a lot of people have clamored for and will be released between now and 2018, the city record, fuel usage by city buildings or energy usage, electricity, oil consumption, water, and things of that sort. The school bus route status, air quality throughout the city of New York, and also the beach water quality. And we have on the open data portal a nomination section where if you have any data that you would like to see, you can nominate it. When we have these conversations, when Ahmed and I sit down with city agencies, we go to them and we let them know the public is clamoring for this. Let's work to get it out. So any nominations, I believe the URL, it's not up there, data.cityofnewyork.us/nominate. Another thing that I just wanted to point out is that if you visited the open data portal before, like I said, there are over 1,200 data sets. There is probably close to 1,300 at this point. It wasn't always so easy to navigate the portal. So one of the nice features of the open data website is that you can find the data that you want and create filters on it to give you the specific information that you need. So if you look at the most popular one, which is 311 service requests, and you want to see noise complaints in your community board, you can actually do that filter, create your own URL or your own visualization for that data set, and it's available for everyone to see. But what happens after a while is when everyone creates their own visualizations, there's a lot of clutter on the website. So you have those official data sets, but you also have all of those filtered views. So we have about 1,200 data sets up, but there are probably about 3,000 filtered views. And unfortunately, right now, there's no easy way to differentiate between those. So what we did was work with the vendor that we're working with to improve that search functionality. So one of the things that you can do, if you look at that right side, is kind of blurry to see, but you can filter by official data, you can filter by city agency, and you can also filter by the types that Amin had mentioned earlier, whether it's your maps, your charts, your line graphs, your pie graphs. So pretty much it's a little bit more customizable, so when you do your filters, when you do your search, it's a lot easier to find what you're looking for. This is just an example of one of the formats in which you can find data. It's a tabular format. You also have that discussion board on the right-hand side where a lot of folks from the city will chime in and give you input and feedback to the questions you have. So if you have a question on 311, in some cases we'll have someone that's actually working at 311 that can chime in and answer your question for you. And it's available for everyone to see. It's a public discussion board. Maps. So one of the things that you can do is you can take that data and you can create maps. So you can create whether it's a heat map or a point map, and you can see where these noise complaints are actually going on, or where these potholes are, or the status of whatever it may be in the 311 data set and many other data sets that are available. And we also link out to external data. So We kicked off the Open Data website in 2009, but prior to that, there were agencies that have done their own work and their own effort on open data, whether it's city planning with Bites of the Big Apple, PD has their own data up for release, Department of Transportation has a number of data feeds where you can find things like, you know, your alternate side parking schedule, real-time traffic speed throughout the city. So in some cases, that data it existed, and it existed in a way that, you know, if it's not broke, we're not going to fix it. So we'll just link to it. And then, like Amin mentioned, you can just do your visualizations, and you have all sorts of options in that area. And we also encourage, when people create nice visualizations, send them to us. We have a Tumblr feed where we highlight those visualizations that come in, and this is a particular one that I kind of like because it just has I guess you could say, a groovy look to it. So if you look at the outliers, which are around midnight, you can see that large pink area in the middle. That's when most of the noise complaints are coming in. And during the middle of the day, you can see that there are a lot of street lights, I guess 311 service requests for graffiti. So anyone that has visualizations, we always welcome. Send them to us. We'll spotlight, we'll highlight your work, give you a little bit of kudos in the public eye. Understanding users, so one thing that this analytics page, what you're looking at, lets you see what people are searching for, the amount of hits each data set is getting. This was originally an administrative feature, so it was only us that could see it, but we just felt, you know, why should only we be able to see it? In the spirit of transparency, we released that analytics page so you can kind of see when peak usage happens on the website, or just what people are looking for. And on a regular basis, it ends up being 311 data, public safety data, and transportation data. So that's what we mostly get requests for, and what we see that people are looking for. Communication, so we have a number of ways to get in contact with us. I'll share my contact info after the meeting. Feel free to send me an email or just grab me before I head out. But we have our Do It Manage Twitter feed. We take in feedback through the nomination section on the Open Data portal. We're available on that discussion board. And we're generally just available to just answer questions and be as helpful as we can. We've actually sat down with a number of community boards in the past and done specific tutorials on the Open Data portal, and we'd be happy to do that again. And lastly, just where you can sort of see that value that comes from open data. So the Big Apps competition is a yearly competition where we invite New Yorkers to take the city data that's available in the Open Data portal and create applications for the good of the city of New York. A lot of the judges that you see work at high-profile companies. I think last year Google's CIO was one of the judges. The Do It Commissioner, which is the city CIO, will always chime in. So it's a big chance for people to take that data, make the data available for New Yorkers to just make living here easier. I think one of the big example, like I mentioned, was that parking ticket, that was that fire hydrant that was bringing in a whole lot of revenue for the city. I know it was very annoying to get tickets from that location. So when we can do this analysis, when MOTA does the analysis, when the public does this analysis, it just works out for the good of New Yorkers overall. So the competitions more than likely will kick off around October of this year, and everyone's invited to just, you know, create your applications and chime in, and then hopefully you can get up to that $150,000 in prize funding that's usually available, and get your applications out and get sponsorship and funding for it. Yeah.
That's it. I'll open it up for questions if there are.
You have any questions, Sean?
Yeah, please. I think you're preaching to the choir in terms of the utility of open data, but we appreciate having access to it, and the more the better. My concern, though, is the methodology by which the data is gathered. You've got some self-reporting from agencies, you have 311-driven data, and that 311-driven data, different agencies are interfacing differently with 311. So, for instance, some complaints they'll take multiples. I think noise complaints, you can call about the same location several times. It will go into 311, each one of those complaints, and then other complaints, once it's in the system, that you won't take another. So we don't know sometimes if there's a complaint that's one person complaining 100 times or 100 people complaining once. And that level of analysis is useful to us as district managers. And I'm wondering if there's any effort to kind of become more transparent with how the inputs are gathered, in addition to making more outputs available.
I mean, so I was going to say, I think that's more the 311 shop. can probably speak to that. I think if you're looking at the data that's in open data that we ultimately get it on the back end once it goes through that process, you might be able to do analysis. I haven't sort of dug through the data. You might be able to do the analysis to break it up the way that you want, but I think what you're asking is, can it be done at the front end so that you can kind of see that data immediately, sort of parsed out that way? I'm not sure. I think that would be Joe Marismo's shop to kind of. Yeah. I just passed the buck there. So yeah.
Any questions, Marty?
One of the issues that I have found when I around is that I find that the complaints that are entered into 311 are sometimes different than what's put out on the open data. How do you ensure that those complaints are they're maintaining the original complaints and not changing the data?
I guess I would have to take a closer look at, what we do is, 311 is pretty much, the data set that's available is the system of record that people are using, so we're connecting straight into that 311 feed and putting it out to the open data portal. So I would have to do a little bit of analysis to see what that gap is. If it, yeah, that would be great. That would be great. And then we'll definitely get you some feedback on that. And
Under the last administration, we were actually working pretty closely with the Mayor's Office of Operations to revamp the MMR, and that opened up the conversation to all of the ways in which data is kept and managed in the City of New York, and we found that there was a lot of duplication, especially when it came time to reporting. We get something called district resource statements, which are mandated to be published. That goes through OMB, and a lot of the data there exists in other formats and other places. And I think it would be nice if we had an opportunity to have an open conversation with you about how we see what our needs are and how they could be met, under the statutes, what's required to be published, and how we can take it one step further. Because the DRS is a useful document for us, but it could be made a lot more useful if we were to incorporate some of the data that already exists in other platforms. So would you be willing to sit down with a group of us that are interested in talking more about data one-on-one, and perhaps even bring the Mayor's Office of Operations back into it?
Yes, the answer is yes, absolutely. I think that's how this should be done, right? Like, I think it should be conversational. It should be, we need to understand what the data needs, what the data concerns. We didn't specify here, but MODA takes, and the Mayor's Office of Operation takes data privacy extremely serious. And so we want to have those conversations with you guys. And we also, MODA oversees open data. We also work closely with DoIT with respect to the data share platform, and then also the data bridge, which is a mechanism by which we get data from agencies and so on and so forth. And you're right, the Mayor's Office of Operations, for the MMR gets data, and they use data differently, and there's all of these sort of disparate data sets. There are lots of reasons why that is. A lot of it has to do with privacy and security. But then there are some ways that we need to begin to talk about how we're using multiple sort of data repositories that can, we can bring those and integrate those data repositories and make your lives a lot easier and allow you to have access to data sets that you originally didn't have access to. So it should, yes, it should be a conversation. We should have that conversation as soon as possible. MODA, we take people reaching out to us and sitting down with us. I think I do that multiple times a week with civic groups, oversight groups, Reinvent Albany, and so on and so forth, and the like, and certainly with organizations like community boards and so on and so forth. We sit down and talk to. I'm sitting down with Chairman Baca in a couple of weeks to discuss the same exact thing. This has to be conversational. Absolutely.
And I have a second question unrelated. If we had an interest in developing an app, which we do in our board, but we're not familiar with the development community, could you help us out? Could you put us in touch with some folks that might be available to do some custom app development work?
No, go ahead.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, part of what I do and the folks over at Do It is always having those conversations with technologists who are willing to do work, we would be willing to work with you, but so would a lot of groups that are out there who are looking to help community boards and other startups, because it's an opportunity for them to kind of show off their talent. So, yes, we can have that conversation around the MMR. I know the piece that kicked off with that was, you saw the revamping of the visualization layer of the MMR, but I think there's still more work that can be done with the back end and the data that actually goes out. But yes, we'd be happy to have that conversation. Like I said, I'll give my contact info out, and we can set that up.
Thank you.
Well, just to follow up, so Craig, on your first question, would that conversation be just with you guys? Would it be with you guys and the Mayor's Office of Operations? To get to Craig's first question, how would that?
Yeah, because there's an MMR component that I'm not.
Okay.
It's way above my pay grade. So I would make sure that someone from Mayor's Office of Operations is there. And so if I'll make sure you have my card. If you can give me a specific question that you have in mind, and I can push, and then we can set up the meeting.
Great, thank you. Any other questions from anyone? All right, great. Thank you very much, guys. And keeping with our data-themed meeting, we're going to go on to our fourth and final agenda item, which is another presentation by Do It on Link NYC, which is this new city initiative to convert all of the payphones in the city into Wi-Fi kiosks. And community boards actually will have an input role into the placement of about 3,500 of these 7,500 kiosks. So they're going to come to you board by board with some information down the road. Thought it'd be a good chance for everyone to kind of get an overview of the program now before they start coming to you individually. So I think we have Nick and a few others from Do It here.
Good morning. Hi. So good morning. I'm Nick Spordone from the Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications. With me is Paul McNicholas and Patrick Fergus, both from the franchise and administration teams at DOITT. That's a fancy term for the folks who administer the contracts that companies have with the city to use city property to provide a service, in this case, payphones, or what is going to come of payphones. So the long and the short of it is, and you may all have some background on this, but I'll run through it quickly. For years and years, there have been public pay telephones on city streets. Back in the day, probably in the late 90s or so, in their heyday, there were approximately 30 or 35,000 of them across the 5 boroughs, a large concentration in Manhattan, but many of them across the city and across the boroughs. With the proliferation of mobile devices, smartphones, et cetera, we have seen payphones, for the most part, not used terribly often anymore, notwithstanding in cases of emergencies, as we saw during Hurricane Sandy. The contracts for the payphones date back to 1999, the current contract, and they recently just expired in October 2014. And what my agency, the Department of IT and Telecom, did in advance of that, starting back in 2011 and 2012, was begin the process of working through and gathering public feedback about what payphones ought to become, what we can do with them rather than simply just ordering them taken out or re-upping and having payphones in the streets again when they really don't get a whole lot of usage anymore. So after a number of rounds of public feedback, we did an RFI back in the summer of 2012. We piloted payphone Wi-Fi in certain locations across the 5 boroughs. We did an RFP thereafter. We did a design competition in early 2013, which asked for feedback from anyone who wanted to give it, students, designers, architects, urban technologists, et cetera. We got back a massive amount of feedback from there as well. And where we netted out with the RFP that we put out in April was that we knew at the very least we wanted to see proposals for what may be done with payphones that at a minimum would provide free public Wi-Fi and free calling to the city's telephone and emergency lifelines 311 and 911. In addition, we wanted the proposers to include anything else that they thought they might be able to achieve given the existing state of conduit and infrastructure in the city. After receiving the RFP responses and going through them through the summer, we were honored last fall and working with Andrew and the Borough President's offices, community and elected officials across the city to announce Link NYC, a couple of models of which you see here. Link NYC is a new network providing free 24/7 up to gigabit speed Wi-Fi across the 5 boroughs. The installations you'll see, there are 2 kinds. There are ones that have a little bit wider breadth. They have advertising on them. The thinner ones are designed for residential areas. All of them will provide free 24/7 Wi-Fi, not just free calling to 301 and 911, but free domestic calling as well. So anywhere in the country you want to call, you'll be able to do so for free from these devices. They are sleek, modern designs. They are not the large, bulky payphones of the past that I know, because they come to us, we get often complaints about people hiding behind them, doing whatever they're doing. So they're sleek and modern. They're a modular design, meaning they can be replaced easily without replacing the whole structure. You can replace the antenna by itself, the screen by itself, et cetera. You'll have a touch screen. You will have speakers to do calling. You'll be able to plug in and charge your device. You'll be able to plug in headphones and make a call that way. Perhaps, well, there's many good parts about it. I want to kind of tick them through. I provided handouts as well, which you can see some of the top-line benefits. They are going to be partially manufactured and completely assembled in the 5 boroughs. The location is not yet determined. The factory isn't finalized yet, but they're going to be manufactured and assembled in New York City. We're going to have local economic development as a part of it as well. And again, because it's a franchise, meaning the city has negotiated with this consortium of companies called City Bridge to provide the links, it is at no cost to the taxpayers. The city is not paying anything for the service. And in fact, because of the design, the business model, the city actually stands to gain significant revenue from these links as well, which can then goes into the general fund and can be invested in additional types of broadband programs across the city, as well as other things as well, UPK, cops, firefighters, teachers, et cetera. So there are a large amount of benefits. We are working now with the borough presidents. Each of the district managers should have received not long ago a letter describing Link NYC with links, not those links, hyperlinks to pages on our site with locations of all the current payphones in Brooklyn and in your community board. And we're requesting again and requiring feedback about if there are particular locations where payphones are today that you don't want a link to be. Please note that, propose an alternative location, and coordinate through Andrew, who is a designated liaison in the borough president's office, so we can get that first that first initial build going. The essential plan for the build is we're talking about up to 7,500 of these link structures over the first 8 years of the franchise. The first 4,000 or so will track, not exactly, will track roughly to where payphones exist today, because City Bridge is going to be leveraging existing conduit and existing infrastructure to get the network up and running, start the service, start providing it, and then from there, the future is very wide open in terms of where additional links will go, and that's exactly where community boards, district managers, elected officials, borough presidents, et cetera, where their voices will become so indispensable because they will have a better sense of the situation on the ground, and where Wi-Fi, frankly, may be more needed. You'll get a better sense of that from a local level than you ever would from a centralized level at a higher point. So we look forward to continuing to work with the board. The first thing, and if anybody didn't get that letter, we can make sure that they get it. That first initial feedback is where we're looking to start, and we are looking hopefully to have the links, knock on wood, the first few maybe even up and running by the end of the year. They're going through the design commission as of right now, and then thereafter we look to have the first ones manufactured and assembled, and with any luck installed on the city streets by the latter end of this year. That's the long and the short of it. I want to certainly open it up for any questions, unless there's any main points that I missed.
There you go.
No.
Anybody who didn't receive the data, just, anybody who didn't receive the data, just let me know and I'll have that data set sent to you. I had sent emails with the attached data set and the proposed, yeah, this is the borough map that was created. I have individual maps for each community board and data sets of all the active phones. So if you, I'll give you my card afterwards and my contact information for anybody who needs that information. Oh, you did get it? Okay. I'm talking about from here.
No, we didn't get it.
I have.
Was there a hard copy sent as well?
No, the maps were not sent as hard copies. I sent PDF documents and Excel spreadsheets, as well as a Word document and a PDF of the proposed structures.
Send it again, because none of us received it.
Okay. It'll be sent again. After the session, I'll be glad to give you my contact information, and I'll send that information. Maybe we don't have the correct email addresses for the contact.
Nobody got it. You did, from him? Yes, I did. Okay, so one.
We'll just make sure we have the right email address and right contact information.
That's fair.
Okay?
Yep. So I think this is a great step that the city's taking, frankly, and there are communities that can benefit from this, obviously. My guess is that the communities that could most benefit from this are communities like Red Hook that don't have payphones. And so I would expect that, therefore, it will be on the long end of the installations as opposed to the short end of them. And I was wondering, you know, what kind of resiliency measures are being built in, because if you're going to be using existing conduits, then if we lose power, are there any backup systems so that we can continue to provide internet access in situations like we had after Sandy, where there were a few households that did have electricity and were able to provide internet for short areas? We had a very small, what do they call it, a mesh network that people started to create, and now they're actually building one on their own. But it would be obviously a lot easier if we were to be able to rely on the City of New York to provide internet access, as opposed to having to rely on people doing it out of their own homes in a makeshift way. So could you talk about whether or not communities like Red Hook and Gowanus that were affected during Sandy could be moved up the list as far as installations go, and what kind of backups you have in place for resiliency measures in case we lose power?
Yeah, 100%. Great questions. Thank you. So let me take the second part of the question first. Yes, the franchise is actually one of the first in the city to have a specific appendix and attachment speaking exactly about redundancy. So as designed right now, I believe it's 24-hour battery backup for the phones at the least. As battery life, sometimes you face limitations with the way the battery designs are. As battery designs continue to improve and the technology there improves, we'll be able to add that to the phone. Add that to the link, I should say. One of the exciting things we think about the franchise, one of the many things, is that we have built-in technology refreshes through the course of the contract. Right? One of the things we wanted to make sure is that 5, 10 years down the road, links don't become what people view payphones as becoming today, which is largely obsolete. No one uses them anymore, right? So Wi-Fi, we're pretty sure, is something from repeated rounds of feedback that we get that people want more of, right? And we are increasingly, I think, all of us coming to view public Wi-Fi as a utility, not a luxury anymore, right? It's like running water and it's like electricity. So we think that Wi-Fi will continue to be very important and something that people want, but there may be other things down the road that we were just not thinking of at the time because technology evolves so quickly. So as it evolves, we'll be able to have both hardware and software refreshers built into the agreement. So there is a redundancy and resiliency attachment to the contract. Well, the contract's all online on our site, by the way. I can send it to Andrew, and to whoever's interested, I'll send you the link. You can read through every part of the contract. The redundancy and resiliency section is its own attachment. Provides for 24-hour battery backup of the phone. And again, as battery technology advances, we hope we'd be able to expand that to Wi-Fi as well. It doesn't mean that Wi-Fi won't have any battery life, but we can't guarantee 24 hours at this particular time based on the power draw. One of the things that is actually very interesting, and we saw this after Sandy as well, is as you make you move them from copper to fiber, fiber's more resilient to water, but they all have their drawbacks, right? So copper will hold a charge longer, which is why in the old days when the power used to go out, our phone always worked because copper was separate and copper held a charge. But when copper gets wet, the game is over, right? It explodes like we saw with the Verizon subsystem during Sandy. Fiber can get wet and not necessarily short out, but it won't hold as much, won't hold the charge as well because it doesn't have the connectivity. So we are working to that, and I will send you that. In terms of Red Hook and other areas, is it true that Red Hook has no payphones?
Yes, there's only 2 phones.
It's 2.
Two
Okay.
phones.
So there are, I think the answer is we could look at it. I think for the most part, for the initial build at least over the first couple of years, it's very important to track, again, not exactly, but to hew fairly closely to where the conduit exists because the city isn't paying anything for it, and in order to build a network of this scope and with this amount of capital build required up front, you need to be leveraging some type of existing infrastructure where it lays. Red Hook, though, obviously is an area that we're focused on, as well as many areas across the 5 boroughs that are traditionally underserved. One of the things that we think is very interesting, as I mentioned earlier, is that while we think Link is a great first step and it significantly moves the needle, it's not the last step, right? The franchise itself provides for the city getting at least $500 million in revenue over the course of the deal. Now, not all that goes back into broadband, it goes into the general fund. But as part of that can be used for additional broadband programs, that's exactly the type of thing that we would want to know, right? So Red Hook has the Red Hook Initiative. They have different things going on in Red Hook as it is, but we would want to be able to use some of that money that comes back to invest particularly in areas that are traditionally underserved, even before the links are able to proliferate there. Does that make sense?
Okay, so basically there's no thought to like solar backups or anything like that?
Nope, there is going to be a solar pilot actually running in the Bronx as part of Link NYC. It was something that was considered that we went through with City Bridge, which was the consortium of companies that is providing Link. They were not able to demonstrate that solar technology was at the point today where it could significantly be relied upon as backup power. Most of the city, solar power needs to be in, obviously has to have light, it has to be in a particular area that gets a certain percentage of sunlight throughout the day. Based on their study, they found that a lot of the south-facing light, which is what you need, wasn't optimized because of a lot of the buildings that exist in different parts of the city. So we're not ruling anything out. If solar gets to the point where the technology could be used, I think that would be something we would look to build into the already accounted for technology upgrades. So if solar could be used, I think that would be swell.
Great. We'll get back to you on that because we're in the process of working with CUNY and EDC to solarize our entire district at this point. And a second question, back in the day when the payphones franchises were negotiated, there was a provision in there that provided for community boards to have free advertising on select locations throughout our districts. And some of us actually, for a while, took advantage of that. Has any of those kind of provisions crept into the modern equivalent here? Would we have an opportunity to get free advertising at any of the link
Yes, you will.
locations in our district?
There was PAA space, public PSA space on the old, on the existing payphones, I guess the ones that are going to be replaced. It's been a little while since I looked at the agreement, but yes. You remember?
Two panels per board, and this provision is going to be higher.
Okay, good. So,
Under the current franchise, the boards were limited to 2 panels within the community district, and we found that a lot of times it was simply a paper handout that was posted by the advertising company. With the new structures, the percentage is higher, and these are going to be digital panels. So there's going to be an ability for the boards to have something that's a little more engaging with the community, to alert them to meetings, and also to provide additional information, whether emergency notices and services, and general meetings, just not only for the board, but for the community on the whole.
So do you have format submission guidelines and contacts that we should be working with to develop turnover rates and things like that?
we will. So none of these are out yet, but we will, yes. There'll be templates for folks, community organizations, small businesses if they want to as well. They'd have to pay small businesses, but yes, there'll be easily templates that you can use just to push it out, and we can get you that information. That's one of the things that we think is really exciting as well, whereas with the current phones, although there was a digital pilot on a few, most of them were paper advertising. You have to go through the process of designing it, printing it up, sending someone out, changing the ad.
Right.
Whereas the digital advertising, with the press of a button, you can simply add. And you can do micro buys as well, right? So small business could buy from 6 to 6:30 every night just with a particular ad as people are coming up out of the subway and getting dinner. There's an advertisement for the local pizza store that's hyper-localized to that particular area.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we really think the future of digital advertising is going. And it's the model that provides for the entire system to be free to everyone at all times.
Great. As much information as you can get to us about that, I'd like to get us to start thinking about how we're going to approach this.
That's great.
Thank
Yes,
you.
absolutely.
Another big concern for us in Community Board 10 was the maintenance of the communities. We had some issues with vandalism, and I'm assuming that we didn't touch upon that. Will the contract include regular maintenance, or will we have the ability again to call should there be vandalism?
Yes. You can always call, 311, call, log on, mobile app, whatever the case may be. Under the existing franchise or the old franchise for the payphones, the provision was, let me know if I have this right, it was they had to be cleaned and inspected twice a month. Under the new franchise, they had to be cleaned and inspected twice a week. So we are very serious about ensuring that these things are kept clean and in good working order. And I think it's the benefit of everyone too. I mean, City Bridge has, or the city has no interest in these things not working. We want them to work for people because we want them to be able to get the service.
I noticed, especially in Community Board 11, that a lot of the existing PPTs are bunched on the commercial programs.
That's right.
Can you tell me, using existing conduits and infrastructure, what the range is?
It's an excellent question. The range is about 150 feet.
150 feet.
Yep, 150.
So it's about 150 feet. That's straight. That's straight line of sight. It may be able to go a little further in certain conditions, but it's 150 feet radius. The idea that we also wanted to do was to kind of cut down on the clutter. So in certain instances, you'll see it in some of the more more congested commercial areas. You see it in Manhattan a lot. You see it in downtown Brooklyn, certainly. You'd see sometimes these double or even triple wide phones, right? They're just big monstrosities, and they have the ad panels around it. So it's quite a large structure. These links, as you see them, are what they are. That's it. There's not going to be two next to each other, right? So if it's a quiet residential block where you don't necessarily, or it's a landmark district, let's say, or if it's exclusively residential area where advertising isn't allowed anyway, you would have one of the residential size links, which is the thinner one here. In areas that have commercial overlays or that are commercial anyway, you would have the wider ones that would have the advertising panels, and that's digital advertising. But they would stand alone, so you wouldn't have 2 and 3 in a row. And because the signal propagates, you would think, okay, well, you can have one, and then you would have at least a certain number of feet before you'd have the next one. So instead of having 3 on a corner and then 3 right across or diagonal, you would have maybe 1, and then you'd be able to have the other ones further out.
So I think my concern was if you had so many together in one area, how would we expand the program so that one portion of the district doesn't have access and the other does because of opportunities?
That's right. That's right. So you're going to have, there won't be clusters. So where there's 3 now, you'll have 1, okay? And then you'll have, you'll stretch out along the way, and you'll be able to have, be able to have individual structures where the clusters are. As it goes, we'll be able to build out. So one of the other things that we think is great about Link NYC, the consortium that is City Bridge, is that one of the partners is Transit Wireless. Transit Wireless, as you may know, is the company that is building out the subways and fitting the subways out with fiber to expand Wi-Fi in the stations as well. Having them as a partner, we think, really changes the game. It was a significant consideration in our choosing City Bridge from among the RFP respondents because we knew that there was a built-in benefit and a built-in incentive to try and get the network expanded. So as it expands along where the subways are, you will have fiber extending, and you have the network, the ability to expand. Where there aren't subways, and I know because I grew up in Marine Park, and that was far from the nearest subway, you would have payphones replaced where they are. To the extent that they're not, that's going to be further along the line in the build. But at the end of the day, you're going to see every borough benefit and get more links than they have payphones today, and that's across the board. So I actually have some numbers here from something we put together a while back. Over the first 8 years, so this is over the initial build, Brooklyn right now has approximately 1,181 payphone installations. Okay, these numbers are a few months old. This was back in December, but give or take. That's installations. That's sometimes double wide, sometimes triple wide. 1,181 of these structures. Under the link proposal, Brooklyn will have 1,346 links. So that's a 14% increase on what it has today. And each of the boroughs is similar. Staten Island actually gains the most because they have the fewest payphones today, and we wanted to make sure this was as an equitable a build across the 5 boroughs as we could. But every borough stands to gain a significant number of what they have today. And that's all part of the mayor's insistence and goal of expanding broadband access and battling inequality across all corners of the 5 boroughs. Yes, ma'am.
So, prime example, Marine Park.
Mm-hmm.
What is there right now will receive one of these?
Yes. For the,
And then head down Avenue, very few payphones, residential community. You get down to the train station. If I remember correctly, the phones are up right on the inside of the station, not curbside. And then there are curbside, so will there be 2 right at that location? Curbside plus right inside the station?
so phones inside stations are not overseen. We don't oversee phones inside subways. That's MTA. The one outside, I think, is safe to say would, unless there's something we're missing, would be replaced with a link. But as fiber reaches that station, I think, and along the line, you'd have the opportunity to be able to add more. So for the most part, the ones that are phones today will be replaced, at least over the first few years, with new links.
Now, could you just review?
Yep.
Both of them have the same exact services other than the advertising.
Correct. There was some confusion there, and I frankly could have done a better job up front about explaining the difference. So initially, what we had envisioned was, because, and this kind of goes back to the infrastructure issue that we've been discussing, because fiber doesn't exist everywhere in the city yet, you can't get the highest speeds everywhere in the city yet, because the infrastructure doesn't exist. It is being built. Where we can get the highest speeds, we want to be able to have it. And where we can't yet get the highest speeds, we wanted to have at least a baseline minimum that was still very, very fast. So to answer your first question, at first we figured, okay, well, the ones that have advertising, that's more people because they're generally in areas where there is more foot traffic. And you'd want more bandwidth to an area where more people are going to be hitting the phone, so the service would be good. But there was obviously some confusion about that. So while the speed of the link was never dependent upon having advertising, we have explicitly delinked that. So that is to say there will be advertising links with gigabit speed and advertising links with speed that isn't quite gigabit because fiber doesn't exist, but it'll have advertising on it. There will be residential structures with gigabit speed and residential structures that don't have gigabit speed because the fiber isn't there yet to support it.
Both of them will have 911, 311.
Aside from the speeds, which we face limitation on the infrastructure on, every other service is at all times the same. Free 311, free 911, free domestic calling, free phone charging, speakers, touchscreen, city services, etc. It's all the same. And that was, to be clear, that was always the intention. It's always going to be the same. The infrastructure is kind of the big lift, and that's what we're looking to get over. And frankly, I'd also add, as technology itself, I'm sorry, I get excited about this, right? So even as technology itself advances, you might see down the road, again, we're talking about 15 years down the path here, you might see the upper end, which is gigabit speeds. Gigabit speed is a very big deal now. In 5 years, gigabit may not be a patch on the arm of 5G or 6G. So as technology advances, you may be able to see, even through the same fiber, speeds of more than 1G easily attainable, in which case the links can go up to that speed because of those built-in technology refreshes. And even on the lower end, the 100 gigabits, even without the benefit of fiber, as technology advances, you might be able to see that lower level be able to raise itself. It may be 2 or 3 gigabits even before fiber is able to be built out. So it's pretty exciting, and we look to continue to be able to improve the services offered based on the infrastructure as it's available, and also based on the fact that these things have to be maintained and have to be upgraded as per condition of the contract.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, the device that invites people to take their valuables out on our public streets, are they equipped with security cameras?
They have, I believe. I don't recall offhand. I can get back to you. I can get back to you on security. Sure.
I'm taking in a lot of information. I'm just trying to synthesize it in my mind. I did hear you say for community boards, the letter that was sent, and you want us to respond as to where the current payphones are and if we're satisfied with them, or if we're not satisfied with them. The question that I have, though, is based on what I hear you explain them, these new gigabits will be placed where the phones currently are. Is that correct?
In the initial build, which is the first 3-4 years, then that's correct.
Okay. The second part of that question is, if there aren't currently phones in any specific area, and let's use residential, would you be able to place the residential structure in that area, even though at this time there may not be public phone service?
I mean, the short answer is yes.
Yeah.
Where it gets a little more kind of into the weeds is when exactly it can happen. We would like to try and do it as soon as we can. I know at the outset, for the most part, the existing conduit needs to be leveraged to be able to get the network up and running and to have it support the network in all places. However, again, like I said before, so I mentioned the number 7,500 before, which was the 7,500 link over the initial 8 years. I'll break that down a little bit for you, okay? We'll unpack that. So it's 7,500 links over the first 8 years at a minimum. Backing out of that, over the first 4 years, you'll see about 4,000 to 4,500 links built roughly where existing payphones are. All right, that leaves us about 3,000 or so links of that initial 7,500 that are on top of where the payphones are. Those phones don't have, they're allocated as to what borough they'll be in, but where in the borough is to be determined. And that's exactly where we will need input from community boards and community organizations, borough presidents, and electeds about where they should be. So you would probably see that, yes, probably toward the latter end, maybe year 4 or 5. On top of that, after the initial 7,500, contract allows for expansion up to 10,000 of these links. Okay, so that's an additional 2,500. So 75 up to 10,000. So an additional 2,500 links, none of which are pegged to go in any particular borough or any particular place, which means there is ample opportunity for significant build out in particular areas, even that don't have payphones today, after the initial build. So the answer is yes. After the initial build, which leverages existing infrastructure, to have significant service across the 5 boroughs. So long story short, only about 4,500 of up to 10,000 locations are roughly determined. That leaves you 5,500 or so locations, or 6,500 locations that are to be determined.
Jump in 1 second.
Yeah.
Would anybody from your department staff, are you guys going to come out and
100%. Yeah, we'd love to. We'd love to do it. Absolutely. Of course. Thank you.
Jump in 1 quick second here. This community input was one of the big points that all the borough president's offices in negotiating with DeWitt and with the mayor's office to finalize this deal came to the table with. This was a big concern of ours. And we think we're at a good point where there are enough opportunities for robust community input, both on the existing 4,000 or so locations that we can say, well, this maybe doesn't make sense anymore to have a kiosk here, even though there used to be a payphone there. We want to propose an alternative site that's within the same criteria. There is a process in the contract for that we negotiated and that the city agreed to with the borough president's offices, so that if we have alternative suggestions, we can put that in writing to do it, and then DeWitt can't just say, no, we're putting it here. There needs to be a response saying, we can't do this for XYZ enumerated criteria because of the infrastructure's not there, the conduit's not there, or whatever the reasons are. So we'd have a good basis as to why we need to place some of these kiosks in the certain locations. And with regards to the newer kiosks, the 35 to 4,000 or so, that was a big thing as well, because as Craig said, some neighborhoods don't.
I mean, the short answer is yes. Where it gets a little more kind of into the weeds is when exactly it can happen. We would like to try and do it as soon as we can. I know at the outset, for the most part, the existing conduit needs to get the network up and running and to have it support the network in all places. However, again, like I said before, so I mentioned the number 7,500 before, which was the 7,500 link over the initial 8 years. I'll break that down a little bit for you, okay? We'll unpack that. So it's 7,500 links over the first 8 years at a minimum. Backing out of that, over the first 4 years, you'll see about 4,000 to 4,500 links built roughly where existing payphones are. All right, that leaves us about 3,000 or so links of that initial 7,500 that are on top of where the payphones are. Those phones don't have, they're allocated as to what borough they'll be in, but where in the borough is to be determined. And that's exactly where we will need input from community boards and community organizations, borough presidents, and electeds about where they should be. So you would probably see that, yes, probably toward the latter end, maybe year 4 or 5. On top of that, after the initial 7,500, contract allows for expansion up to 10,000 of these links. Okay, so that's an additional 2,500. So 75 up to 10,000. So an additional 2,500 links, none of which are pegged to go in any particular borough or any particular place, which means there is ample opportunity for significant build out in particular areas, even that don't have payphones today, after the initial build. So the answer is yes. After the initial build, which leverages existing infrastructure, to have significant service across the 5 boroughs. So long story short, only about 4,500 of up to 10,000 locations are roughly determined. That leaves you 5,500 or so locations or 6,500 locations, that are to be determined.
Jump in 1 second.
Yeah.
Would anybody from your department staff, are you guys going to come out and inform?
100%. Yeah, we'd love to. We'd love to do it. Absolutely. Of course. Thank you.
I'm just gonna jump in 1 quick second here. This community input was one of the big points that all the borough president's offices in negotiating with DeWitt and with the mayor's office to finalize this deal came to the table with. This was a big concern of ours. And we think we're at a good point where there are enough opportunities for robust community input, both on the existing 4,000 or so locations that we can say, well, this maybe doesn't make sense anymore to have a kiosk here, even though there used to be a payphone there. We want to propose an alternative site that's within the same criteria. There is a process in the contract for that we negotiated and that the city agreed to with the borough president's offices, so that if we have alternative suggestions, we can put that in writing to do it, and then DeWitt can't just say, no, we're putting it here. There needs to be a response saying, we can't do this for XYZ enumerated criteria because of the infrastructure's not there, the conduit's not there, or whatever the reasons are. So we'd have a good basis as to why why we need to place some of these kiosks in the certain locations. And with regards to the newer kiosks, the 35 to 4,000 or so, that was a big thing as well, because as Craig said, some neighborhoods don't have payphones right now. Some areas don't, frankly, need Wi-Fi as much as others. We're in downtown Brooklyn. We have a free Wi-Fi network here, and this is where a lot of the payphones in Brooklyn happen to be. So there's no point in duplicating that network here, whereas other parts of the boroughs out in your districts don't have existing payphones and don't have the availability of free Wi-Fi. Those are areas we want to prioritize. So we want to really focus on a collaborative process, and this is something they're going to give the same presentation at the borough board next month as well. And we want to our office wants to work with the community boards to come up with kind of our own master plan, if you will, of where the existing sites are that we are okay with, ones that we may have concerns about, as well as suggest areas for future growth and input as well. And one of the things that came up in our researching and discussions on this point was that to install the gigabit, and this number blew my mind, to install the gigabit kiosks in areas where there's no current infrastructure to support that is 6 times more as costly as it is to build it where there already is existing fiber optic network. And we're not using the Fios network or any of those other privately run networks that they're building out either from the transit wireless system or the city-owned fiber. So it's significantly much more expensive to build out the fiber, which is why we have this concern about we can't get to every neighborhood as quickly as we like, because frankly, it costs a lot to do that. But we are very aware of those concerns, and that's something that we took very, very seriously throughout this entire process. So we're looking forward to having that discussion with each of you guys. DeWitt's willing to come out to every community board to have these conversations, to do these presentations to each board, and then we want to try to collaborate and put together a comprehensive report for the entire borough on these new kiosks, where they should be, where they shouldn't be, et cetera. Thank you. Greg?
So I guess I should start by thanking the Borough President's Office for having the foresight to include some kind of a community engagement process in the planning for this new system. Since one of the goals was to reuse infrastructure and reduce clutter, the fire alarm boxes, do they have comparable technologies that could be converted over easily?
It's a good question. I don't know. It's a fire department. It's a fire department thing, I guess is the best word to say, but I will find out for you. It's not the first time I've heard, oh, can we?
Well, I asked that specifically because there was a plan under 2 administrations ago to remove the fire alarm boxes, and our community, especially in Red Hook, said because we have no payphones, this is our only emergency access. And we fought to save our fire alarm boxes, and they were preserved. So we know we still have those in Red Hook. And if there's a way that those can be adapted over easily to the Linksys, then the Link NYC, then we would encourage you to take a look at that as an alternative to move us up on the queue.
They're hardwired as well, but I believe they're copper, right? They're copper based. They're not.
I don't know. I'm asking you.
Okay, we can find out.
One of the other things that we negotiated was because there's a number of ideas like Craig mentioned, the solar, the firebox and things like that. other enhancements that can be made to the system. One of the things that we asked DeWitt to consider, they agreed, is that as ideas come up in the future, for future considerations, that the city takes those ideas seriously and not just as, okay, great idea, we'll put it in the filing cabinet. That the city committed to meeting, if we had serious proposals to make to enhance the Lincoln NYC system, they would take it under serious consideration and engage in a very thoughtful deliberation with us. For example, we had a proposal that was testified at the public hearing on the contract from the U.S. Postal Service to find a way to, marry the postal boxes with the Lincoln NYC system. It didn't work out for other reasons, but they presented. Our office was really intrigued by the idea. The next week, we had the Postal Service Deputy Postmaster General up here, meeting with the Commissioner of DeWitt to talk about these ideas. So I think there is a strong commitment to make this work and make this as successful as possible, and integrating whatever we can to continue to grow the system out to be, much, much better. So I take them at their word that this is something that would be under consideration in the future.
Many of our parks in Southwest Lakeland do not have Wi-Fi access. Have you negotiated or had discussions with the Department of Parks to bring these into to bring Wi-Fi?
So there are a number of initiatives underway aside from, or I guess I should say in addition to Link NYC for Parks Wi-Fi. One of the, I actually have the list here. One of the provisions of the cable television franchise agreements, which is a different franchise, right? So we're talking about Cablevision and Time Warner in Brooklyn, and you're part of Brooklyn, I'm guessing it's Cablevision. Verizon exists there too as Fios is being built out, but as part of the renewals for Cablevision and Time Warner back in 2010, 2011, one of the things that we negotiated and they agreed to do was to build out public parks for Wi-Fi service as well. So I have the list of the parks in Brooklyn that exist today. If there are particular parks that you have in mind, we can sync after the meeting, send me the list of ideas that you have, and we can take those to the Parks Department as well, because we originally thought it was going to be about 32 parks or so, and the fund that the companies had set aside actually has gotten us up over 50, and I think that they're still building. So to the extent that we can expand that, we'd love to do it. No, I don't see any here. I'll read them off so you have them. So Brooklyn Bridge Park. Do you want to speak to the Parks Commission? Paul can speak to the Parks Commission.
That information is helpful because a number of our PTs are also located in parks, so in speaking of that, that would be precise and
It's a real question. I think we'd have to take the question back about a payphone inside a park. A payphone on a sidewalk around a park, I think that's probably ripe for link replacement. Inside a park might be a different set of. Okay, then I think that would probably be right on the line for Link NYC. I have Marine Park here actually. Is that one of the parks you have in mind? No, right? I'll just read them off quickly and then we can sync up and then Paul would add. So Brooklyn Bridge Park, Brownsville Playground, Coffee Park, Fort Greene Park, Gravesend Park, Herbert Von King Park, Steeplechase, Manhattan Beach, Marine Park, McCarran Park, McKinley Park, Metropolitan Recreation Center, Cadman Plaza, Carroll Park, Prospect Park, Red Hook Recreation Area, St. John's Recreation Center, and Wingate Park. Those are the parks today in Brooklyn that have the service from the cable build. That's the list as it exists today, but that's not the end of the line. I think we're still adding parks. Did you want to?
Yes, you can also find this information on open data, hotspots, and you can see all the hotspots that are sponsored by city franchises and gifts to the city, as well as NYC.gov's GovMap has the same data set. They're both married, they both match, and they're updated quarterly, so you can see all the sites that are up there. I can send you those links.
Yeah, we'll exchange information. We'll make sure we get that information, okay? Okay.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that concludes our agenda for this month. Is there any other business that needs to be brought forth? Any other announcements by any managers or agencies? Any questions? Okay, if you have any topics you'd like to present at a future meeting, please, you always know how to reach me. Our next Borough Service Cabinet meeting is Tuesday, March 10th. Note that is for district managers only, so the agencies get a break for next month. So next Tuesday, March 10th, district managers only. We will see everyone else in April again. I believe it's April 14th is the next full Borough Service Cabinet meeting. Thank you, everybody.